If you find it difficult to understand TOEFL academic lectures because of the challenging topics they cover, keep watching this video. Around 50% of students struggle to achieve a good listening score because they don't understand many of the academic words used in TOEFL lectures. While it's not necessary to know every word to answer questions correctly, there are certain keywords that should be part of your vocabulary. These words will help you grasp the main ideas of the lecture and understand enough details to answer the questions with ease and confidence. Today, I've prepared a very practical lesson for you. We'll study words commonly found in life science and biology lectures, and then analyze 2 TOEFL lectures together. You'll encounter many of the words we've studied, and at the end of each lecture, I'll specifically point them out again. This approach will not only improve your listening skills, but also expand your vocabulary. Also, because you'll see these words in context, you'll remember them better. This is because your brain will recognize them as essential for your TOEFL success, not just as random items on a list to memorize. Don't forget to let me know in the comments which words were new for you and how many points you got in each lecture. Let's dive in. We'll start with the vocabulary. Some of these words might seem very specific to you. You might think, why do I need to know the names of these animals and so on? Don't worry, once you start listening to TOEFL lectures, you'll hear these words frequently. And believe me, it's incredibly satisfying to understand what the speaker is saying. If you already know these words, feel free to skip this part of the video and jump straight to the first lecture. Hibernation. A period of rest in some animals during the winter to conserve energy when food is scarce. This word is very common in TOEFL lectures. One of the lectures I like to analyze with my students is about hibernation. We can also use the verb to hibernate, which means to go into a deep sleep during the winter. Animals like bears, hedgehogs, and chipmunks hibernate in winter. Another word to discuss is the verb to forage. It means to look for food in the wild. A forager is someone who searches for food. Humans can also be foragers. Historically, early human societies were hunter-gatherers who foraged for nuts, seeds, and other edible plants, as well as hunted animals. Even today, some people practice foraging as a hobby. Foragers may gather wild mushrooms, berries, herbs, and other natural foods. Now, foraging refers to the act of searching for and collecting wild food resources. The next word is scavenger. It's an animal that eats dead plants or animals, helping to clean up the environment. Some examples of scavengers are vultures and ravens. As unpleasant as scavenging may seem, it's important to remember that scavengers play a crucial role in ecosystems by helping to recycle nutrients and reduce the spread of disease. 31. Internal. Internal means happening or existing inside. For example, internal mechanisms or processes occur within an organism. Digestion is an internal process. Now, external is existing or happening outside a person, a company, a place, or a country. Factors or stimuli that come from outside an organism are called external. 33. Species. A species is a distinct group of animals or plants that share common characteristics and can interbreed. Your poodle and your bulldog are the same species, but your hamster and your goldfish are not. The next 2 words are food web and food chain. A food web is a network of who eats whom in an ecosystem, showing how energy moves through living things. Now, a food chain is a sequence of organisms where each one is eaten by the next, starting with plants. Food chains and food webs often appear in TOEFL lectures and integrated speaking tasks. The next word is ecosystem. I've already used it a few times in this video. It's a community of living things, such as plants and animals, that interacts with each other and their environment, such as air, water, and soil. It's like a complex web where everything depends on everything else. 37. Heterotroph. A heterotroph is an animal that can't make its own food supply, so it must eat other things, such as plants or other animals, to survive. Humans are heterotrophs because we eat plants or meat to stay alive. There are 3 types of heterotrophs: herbivores, carnivores, and omnivores. Herbivores eat grass, carnivores eat other animals, and omnivores eat both. 38. Autotroph. Plants that produce their own food are called autotrophs. plants, algae, and some bacteria are autotrophs and form the basis of food chain. 39. Crustacean. A crustacean is a member of class of arthropods that live in water. These aquatic animals have exoskeletons. Some of your favorite seafood comes from crustaceans: crabs, lobsters, and shrimp. Finally, the last word is biodiversity. Biodiversity is a shortened form of two words: biological diversity. Biological refers to the study of life forms. Diversity means many and different. When you have many animals or plants living in one place, you have biodiversity. For example, scientists believe that the deep ocean may be as rich in biodiversity as the planet's tropical rainforests. Now, if you know that a bobcat is an animal in the cat family that looks like this, you'll understand the lecture better. So, for animals, we're going to have little picture quizzes. You'll see pictures of animals changing one by one, and your task will be to guess what these animals are. Let's dive right in. Let's begin with the classes of animals. When classifying animals, scientists divide them into two groups: invertebrates, which is our first word, and vertebrates, the second word on our list. Invertebrates are animals without a backbone. They can live on land, like insects, spiders, and worms, or in water. Some examples of invertebrates are, and now it's time for your first vocabulary test. Look at the pictures and name the animals you see. I'll give you the correct word in a few seconds. Sea anemones. Sea urchins. Crayfish. Termites. Snails. All of these animals are invertebrates. By the way, don't forget to keep track of how many words you know, and then share your results at the end of the video. For example, 75 out of 109, or 100 out of 109. The next word is arthropods. An arthropod is an invertebrate animal with no internal spine. A spine is a backbone that vertebrates have, a body made of segments joined together, and a hard covering, like shell. Arthropods include insects and similar creatures. Spiders are a common example of arthropods. Other typical examples of arthropods are dragonflies, ants, beetles, ladybugs, flies, shrimp, and grasshoppers. Back to vertebrates. These are animals with a backbone. They include mammals. Mammals are warm-blooded animals that have fur or hair, give birth to live offspring, with a few exceptions, and produce milk to feed their young. Time for a quick vocabulary quiz. A hamster, a whale, a bat, a giraffe, and even a human are all mammals. Polar bears, orcas, sloths are those slow-moving mammals known for their relaxed, laid-back lifestyle. Meerkats. Now, all mammals are vertebrates, but not all vertebrates are mammals. Birds are also vertebrates. How would you call this bird? It's an eagle. And this one? It's a hawk. Owl. falcon, ostrich, raven. Vertebrates also include reptiles, which are cold-blooded animals with scaly skin. Some examples are snakes, lizards, reptiles that have scales for skin, a long body, a pointed tail, and usually 4 legs. Turtles, tortoises, crocodiles, and alligators. Here's an interesting question for you. What's the difference between a turtle and a tortoise? Turtles live mostly in water, such as ponds, rivers, and oceans, but some species can also live on land. Tortoises, on the other hand, are primarily land dwellers, often found in dry or grassy areas. Turtles spend most of their time in water and come ashore mainly to lay eggs. Now, tortoises spend their entire lives on land, in burrows or under rocks to stay cool. One important note, as I always say, knowing a lot of words is a great help on your TOEFL test, but it's not enough to get a 100 or higher. If you really want to score high, you should know the question strategies and, most importantly, use them effectively. Recently, I've been busy with consultations after our TOEFL prep course and my one-on-one sessions, and since I'm always analyzing the mistakes my students make, I've once again come to the conclusion that most students only need to change a few minor things to get the score they really need. Instead, they spend time, money, and effort retaking the test over and over again, trying to get their target score. For example, most students usually come to our sessions with a score of 22 to 23 on the speaking test. Not because they have a poor level of English, but because they're so worried about following all the rules that when they start to speak, they stutter, hesitate, and produce the worst possible answers. The same goes for reading. Most of the students I see in my sessions are well aware of the strategies for each question. Yet, they don't use those strategies well enough to find the right answers quickly. So we have to go through each question type together, and then they start getting high scores. So, if you're struggling with any section of the test, you can take our TOEFL course, where we'll teach you all the skills you need to finally ace the TOEFL test. The link is below. As always, if you choose the Pro package with a post-course consultation, be sure to schedule it at least a week before the test. That way, you'll have time to implement all the corrections I've made. Amphibians are another class of vertebrates. These are animals that can live in water and on land. A typical amphibian is a cold-blooded vertebrate that is born in water and breathes with gills. This is another word from our list. Gills look like this. As amphibians grow, their lungs develop so that they can also live on land. Some examples of amphibians are frogs and toads. Frogs are smooth and slimy with long legs, while toads are bumpy, dry-skinned with shorter legs. Finally, fish are aquatic vertebrates with gills and fins. We've already discussed what gills are. Now this is how fins look. Time for another small animal vocabulary test. Clownfish. It's a swordfish. This is a herring. A seahorse. A trout. The first block of our lecture covered. Congratulations! Now, you may ask yourself, do I really need all these words? Will they be used on the TOEFL? The answer is of course. Just recently, I was going through a reading passage that mentioned the invertebrate fauna. So, let's keep going. A few other words to know are specimen. A specimen is a sample of something, such as a specimen of blood or body tissue taken for medical testing. In zoology, this word means a sample or example of an animal, often used in scientific studies. For example, A specimen of an African lion might be used to study its anatomy, behavior, or genetics. Again, a few days ago, I was analyzing a TOEFL lecture with one of my students, and there was a part about a rare insect specimen. Let's continue. Animals can be warm-blooded or cold-blooded. Warm-blooded animals are those that can maintain a nearly constant body temperature, regardless of the environment in which they live. They can also be called endotherms. Remember that endotherms are warm-blooded animals. For example, mammals and birds are endotherms. Now, cold-blooded animals are those that rely on the outside environment to regulate their body temperature. They're also called ectotherms. Ectotherms are cold-blooded animals. Some examples of ectotherms are reptiles, amphibians, and fish, which are the words we already know. Great job! The TOEFL integrated writing task likes to explore the topic of endotherms and ectotherms, and you'll often find these words in reading passages and lectures. So I suggest you write them down if you haven't heard them before. Animals can also be diurnal and nocturnal. Diurnal animals are those that are active during the day. For example, lions, squirrels, cheetahs. Nocturnal animals, as you may have guessed, are active during the night. Some common examples of nocturnal animals are owls, hedgehogs, raccoons, and bats. So diurnal is active during the day, and nocturnal is active during the night. When studying animals, scientists also examine their dietary habits. Animals can be herbivores. These are animals that eat mostly plants. Some examples of herbivores are a kangaroo, a hippopotamus, a rhinoceros, or a rhino. Carnivores. These are animals that eat other animals. Examples: anteaters, sharks, tigers, wolves. Omnivores are animals that eat both plants and animals. Some examples of omnivores are wild boars, bears, skunks, and of course humans. On the TOEFL, you'll often see mentions of carnivores, omnivores, and herbivores in lectures and reading passages. You may also see adjectives: carnivorous, omnivorous, and herbivorous. For example, carnivorous plants, herbivorous animals. If you've taken TOEFL speaking tests, you definitely see in question 4 about carnivorous plants. Now, you know that carnivorous plants are plants that catch and eat animals, usually insects, to get nutrients. When we looked at the examples of omnivores, we saw the word wild boars. Boars are wild animals. Animals can be wild or domesticated. Domesticated animals are animals that have been bred and trained by humans over generations to live with and be useful to people. Let's test how well you know domesticated animals. Some typical domesticated animals are a hen, an ox, a yak, a calf, a donkey, a cow. Now, a few wild animals are leopards. Note the pronunciation: leopard. Stags, which are male deer, and beavers. Speaking of beavers, they are rodents. This is another word you'll see a lot on the TOEFL. Rodents are mammals that have a single pair of sharp incisors, which are narrow-edged teeth at the front of their mouth, in both the upper and lower jaws. Mice, rats, squirrels, beavers, and hamsters are all rodents. So, when you hear the word rodent, remember that it's a small animal with sharp teeth. Rodents are primarily prey rather than predators. They are often hunted by various predators, including birds of prey, such as hawks and owls, carnivorous mammals, such as foxes, and even larger reptiles, like snakes. As you can see, you already know so many words. Hawks, owls, reptiles. What about prey and predators? Animals that are hunted and eaten by other animals are called prey. For example, hares are a typical example of prey. Predators are animals that hunt and eat other animals, such as wolves. Finally, let's talk about habitats. Habitats are places where animals live. Your habitat is the environment you're used to living in. Habitats can be aquatic or terrestrial. Aquatic animals live in water. Now, terrestrial animals live on land. Aquatic habitats include freshwater environments, such as lakes, rivers, or ponds, and saltwater environments, such as oceans. Freshwater animals include fish, such as trout, amphibians, such as frogs, and insects, such as water striders. Saltwater animals include sea anemones and jellyfish. Other aquatic animals include oysters, sea otters, rays, seahorses, seals, clams, squid, and sea lions. On the TOEFL, you may also find a collocation, marine animals. These animals live in the ocean or sea, not in freshwater. They're a subset of aquatic animals, but are found only in saltwater environments. Marine animals include a wide range of species, such as sharks, clownfish, whales, dolphins, seals, and starfish. Simply put, while all marine animals are aquatic, not all aquatic animals are marine. Aquatic animals can live in either fresh or salt water, while marine animals are adapted to ocean environments. Speaking of terrestrial or land animals, we've already covered many of them. Two more examples that I think are interesting to mention are a moose and a gazelle. As you can see, habitats are different environments where animals live. Some typical habitats are freshwater habitats, deserts, grasslands, wetlands, estuaries, rainforests, oceans, savannas, and coastal habitats. Ready for one last animal vocabulary check? What's this animal called? A humpback whale. All of you have probably done the integrated essay about humpback whales. If you haven't, try it. You can find it on the KMF platform, TPO 49. The next one is vultures. Amoeba. There is a cool YouTube channel called the Amoeba Sisters that I highly recommend to improve your biology vocabulary. They explain difficult concepts in a fun and easy to understand way. I'll also be filming a new video on biology terms for the TOEFL test soon, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon to make sure you don't miss it. A baleen whale. The last animal for today is a bobcat. Congratulations! As you can see, we're closing this episode with the same word we started with. If you want to have all the words in one place, use the link below to download our free PDF file. Now that we have the necessary vocabulary under our belt, let's dive straight into the first lecture. Listen carefully and organize your notes into clear sections. TOEFL questions usually focus on specific thematic blocks within the lecture, so recognizing these blocks is crucial. If you're unsure how to take notes effectively, or feel that note-taking gets in the way of your understanding, join our TOEFL course. We'll analyze lectures and conversations in detail, and I'll show you exactly what to include in your notes and what to leave out. I'll also share useful abbreviations to help you write faster and more efficiently. In addition to listening practice, we'll cover reading question types and work through reading passages together. For those struggling with vocabulary, we've prepared Quizlet sets with new words organized by topic: astronomy, archaeology, agriculture, physics, and more. Click on the link below to join our close-knit TOEFL community. Lecture 1.
Listen to part of a university lecture on animal behavior by a professor of biology. We're looking at animal behavior this week, and let's turn now, class, to one of its most dramatic manifestations, animal mimicry. Organisms that are good to eat or that are attacked for other reasons often develop devices, through evolution of course, techniques and devices to protect themselves from their attackers in order to survive and in order to reproduce and pass their genes on to the next generation. And one of these techniques, one of these strategies, is to look like something else, to look like something that is not good to eat, or something that is otherwise of no interest to the predator. An organism that does this, that resembles something else, is called a mimic. And the thing that it has evolved to resemble is called the model, while the predator that it is trying to mislead is called the recipient, the one that receives the misleading image. Some mimics do this by adopting camouflage, which is a cryptic resemblance to something of no interest to its enemy. And by doing this, they become invisible. They are hidden. Many animals, insects, lizards, amphibians, mimic the abundant plant life in the habitat around them. I'm sure that you've seen green grasshoppers and brown moths that seem to be well hidden on grass stems and tree trunks when they're motionless. But the leaf-tailed gecko, a small lizard in Madagascar, is a master at this. It avoids its enemies by looking exactly like a cluster of old dead leaves. And there are various species of katydids, grasshopper-like insects that have managed to duplicate the appearance of leaves with startling accuracy. In all stages of growth, some species looking like fresh green leaves and others looking like old decaying leaves, complete with leaf veins, weathered edges, and mildew spots. These adaptations make these animals difficult or impossible for a predator to identify or even notice, and so these otherwise defenseless creatures are overlooked or passed by. Other organisms defend themselves directly with stings or bites or with poisons or other noxious chemicals, and such organisms often assume bold, characteristic colors and markings, called warning coloration, that warns a predator, reminds it that this creature can inflict pain or discomfort, or that it tastes very bad. The bold orange and black pattern of the common monarch butterfly, or the black and yellow bands on a bumblebee are such warning colorations. And sometimes this warning coloration is so effective that another species, a species that doesn't have any of the protective devices of sting or poison or whatever, will adopt the same warning colors and pattern. This sort of mimicry is called Batesian mimicry. The name comes from the early zoologist H.W. Bates, who back in 1862 first suggested an explanation for the origins of mimicry based on Charles Darwin's new theory of natural selection. This was one of the earliest applications of Darwin's ideas to an unknown biological phenomenon. Now, viceroy butterflies taste good to many birds, but because they mimic the monarch butterfly's model's color pattern, because viceroy butterflies look like monarch butterflies, they are avoided, just like the monarch is. In the same way, many harmless fly species resemble the bumblebee model, and also in this way they avoid being eaten by the recipients, birds. So these are Batesian mimics. There are several conditions that must be fulfilled, though, for a Batesian mimic to be successful. The mimic must, of course, share the same general region and habitat as its model, but the mimic must also be less numerous than its model, which must be relatively abundant. That way, the odds are that the recipient predator will sample an unpalatable model first, which is very important for keeping the trick effective. A similar kind of mimicry is Mullerian mimicry, named after another early biologist. And in this sort of mimicry, both the model and the mimic are dangerous or taste bad. A very obvious example is the way that so many unrelated species of bees, wasps, and ants have assumed similar, bold, black and yellow, or black and orange banded patterns. By doing this, Mullerian mimics present a united image that predators soon learn to be weary of. There's also another aspect of mimicry that I'd like to mention too, and that's the mimicry used by predators. This is called aggressive mimicry, and it is used to conceal or misrepresent a predator until its prey comes near enough to capture. Many mantids, for example, are green or brown, so that they blend in with their plant surroundings. But some tropical mantids are fantastically shaped and colored, like the beautiful orchid mantis, which resembles a petal of one of those tropical flowers, and it hides motionless next to one of these orchids until an insect comes within its reach. There are also several green-colored vine and grass snakes of various families, which lie invisible among the tangled vines and branches of the jungle until they suddenly lash out to grab their prey. Actually, there are an endless number of ingenious mimics in the natural world, and I recommend that you all try a Google Images search tonight for some more interesting examples of this fascinating behavior.
Question 1. Why does the lecturer mention Charles Darwin? The correct answer is B. Darwin's theory was used to explain mimicry. In the lecture, the professor explains what Batesian mimicry is. He says that the name comes from a zoologist who first proposed an explanation for the origins of mimicry. This zoologist based his proposal on Charles Darwin's new theory of natural selection. And this was one of the earliest applications of Darwin's ideas to an unknown biological phenomenon. So Darwin wasn't the one to explain mimicry, nor was he mentioned because he was the creator of the theory of evolution. The lecturer mentioned him because this theory was used to explain mimicry. Question 2. What is the term used for an organism that is fooled by mimicry? The recipient. Answer A. An organism that fools a predator is called a mimic. It pretends to be something else, or the model, and the predator being fooled by mimicry is the recipient. Question 3. Why does the lecturer mention katydids? Because they look like leaves. D is the correct answer. The professor says that some species of katydids, which look like grasshoppers, have managed to duplicate the appearance of leaves. Question 4. Some moths and butterflies have large owl-like eye spots concealed on their underwings, which they can suddenly display to a predator. Which kind of mimicry is this an example of? The correct answer is A. Batesian mimicry. Batesian mimicry is a type of mimicry in which an organism tries to look like another dangerous organism to deter predators. In this case, moths and butterflies have eye spots similar to the eyes of an owl, a predator that other attackers might fear. So moths and butterflies protect themselves by looking like other dangerous animals, which is exactly what Batesian mimicry is all about. Question 5. Which organism is presented as an example of aggressive mimicry? The orchid mantis. B is the right answer. Aggressive mimicry is a type of mimicry used to hide a predator until its prey is close enough to capture. The orchid mantis looks very much like an orchid, a beautiful tropical flower. It hides next to other orchids until an insect comes close enough to attack. Question 6. Which would be the best title for this lecture? Animal deception. Answer C. The lecture is about how animals trick their attackers to protect themselves. They do this by pretending to be something they are not. Now, to deceive means to convince someone that something false is the truth. It's a synonym for the verb to trick. So the correct answer is animal deception. Now, let's check the new vocabulary we encountered in this lecture. We saw such words as predator, insects, lizards, amphibians, habitat, grasshoppers, zoologist, snakes, and prey. Now it's time for the second lecture. You'll listen to a lecture from a marine biology class. Remember the word marine from our vocabulary list? Well, here it is. Usually, TOEFL lectures include 6 questions, but in this lecture, we'll only have 5 questions. Now, let's give this lecture a try and see if it's more challenging than the previous one.
Listen to part of a lecture from a marine biology class. You've been reading this month about food chains and food webs. Today we'll discuss these in relation to seafood. How many of you like seafood? Most of you. So do I. In fact, I'm on a seafood diet. I see food, I eat it. Get it? Okay. But seriously, folks, today we're going to talk about trophic relationships in marine food chains and webs. Who can remind us what a trophic relationship is? Yes, Miss Lee.
It's what an organism eats and the things that eat that organism.
Very good. Trophic relationships describe the relationship between producers and consumers, so they help us diagram food chains and food webs. Now, in marine ecosystems, like other ecosystems, food is needed for matter, growth and reproduction, and for energy, metabolic processes within the body. Also, like other ecosystems, marine ecosystems have producers, consumers, and decomposers. The primary producers are autotrophic plankton. Autotrophic means these plankton can synthesize their own food. Autotrophs are consumed by heterotroph organisms. Hetero means other. So in this case, heterotrophic means organisms that can't synthesize their own food. They must rely on autotrophs for food energy. The primary consumers in marine food chains are the plant eaters, herbivores, and the secondary consumers are both the meat eaters, carnivores, and predators that eat both meat and plants, omnivores. The decomposers are heterotrophic bacteria, which get energy from body wastes and dead tissue, thus cycling it back to the producers. A simple marine food chain then might look like this. The top predator, trophic level number 4, is a herring. Herring fish eat level 3, carnivorous zooplankton. The carnivorous zooplankton eat trophic level 2, herbivorous zooplankton, and herbivorous zooplankton eat level number 1. Photoplankton, which is a type of autotroph. In marine food chains, energy transfer is not very efficient. Photoplankton utilize only about 1% of the energy available from the sun. Between 70 and 90% of the energy made by producers or eaten by heterotrophs is used in their bodies or expelled as waste. This leaves only 10 to 30% that is retained in the body's biomass and available for consumers at the next highest trophic level. Thus, the biomass at each trophic level is controlled by the efficiency of the energy transfer. At the lowest trophic level, animals will generally have high biomass, and there will be lots of small producers. At the highest trophic level, animals will generally have low biomass, and there will be only a few large animals. Now, let's expand our simple food chain into a food web. In this web, a herring is no longer a trophic 4 predator. There is a bigger fish, a tuna, that eats the herring. But there's even a bigger animal that eats the tuna, and that is...
Us.
Yes, and there's something else from the seas that will even eat us.
Sharks.
Correct. A food web is more complex than a food chain. And then there are gigantic animals like whale sharks and baleen whales that are herbivores and only eat plankton. But let's focus for a few moments on us. What are the implications of trophic levels for the fish we eat? Well, looking at the fish harvest worldwide, 88% of the fish we catch are fish with fins. 8% are shellfish, and 4% are crustaceans. Fish caught in the open ocean, such as tuna, are high-level predators on an inefficient food chain. Fish caught in coastal waters, such as cod, herring, and haddock, are at the top end of shorter, more efficient food chains. This is because there's a high level of phytoplankton, so consumers expend less energy catching food. These fish, then, provide more energy and better nutrition for us. In upswelling areas off the west coasts of America and Africa, the fish are even healthier. Here they are small, very efficient food chains, and the fish are small, fast-growing, eat lots of phytoplankton, and travel in dense schools. Two examples of such fish are anchovies and sardines.
The first question is, what aspect of marine food chains does the professor mainly discuss? Look at the answer options. Food webs, energy transfer, trophic relationships, seafood harvesting. We've just talked about food webs, food chains, and trophic relationships in the first part of our video. As you learned from the lecture, trophic relationships refer to the relationships between producers and consumers. Simply put, it's about whether animals are autotrophs, organisms that can create their own energy and form the base of the food chain, or heterotrophs, organisms that cannot produce their own food and must obtain energy and nutrients by consuming other organisms, such as herbivores, carnivores, omnivores, and so on. These are all words we've just discussed. Trophic relationships is the correct answer here. At the beginning of the lecture, the professor says, today we're going to talk about trophic relationships in marine food chains and webs. Then continues discussing trophic relationships, explaining the concepts of autotrophic plankton, heterotrophs, food chains, and food webs. However, the main focus remains trophic relationships, even though option A, food webs, might seem tempting to choose. Question 2. According to the professor, why is herring healthier for us than tuna? Herring is a small, silver-colored fish that looks like this. Now, go to your notes and check what you've written about it. Think about the answer, then continue watching. The right answer is A. Herring have a more efficient food chain. In the lecture, the professor explains the fish caught in coastal areas, such as herring, are at the top of shorter and more efficient food chains. This means there is less energy loss between trophic levels compared to fish like tuna, which are high-level predators in longer, less efficient food chains, because energy is lost at each trophic level. The shorter the food chain, the more energy is retained, making herring a healthier and more energy-efficient choice for humans. Let's look at the relevant part of the lecture. This information was given near the very end. The professor said, fish caught in the open ocean, such as tuna, are high-level predators on an inefficient food chain. Fish caught in coastal areas, such as cod, herring, and haddock, are at the top end of shorter, more efficient food chains. This is because there is a high density of phytoplankton, so consumers expend less energy catching food. These fish then provide more energy and better nutrition for us. So herring is better for us than tuna because it comes from a more efficient food chain. Question 3. In the lecture, the professor describes a simple marine food chain. Which of the following is mentioned in the lecture as part of this chain? The lecturer said, a simple marine food chain then might look like this. The top predator, trophic level number 4, is a herring. Herring fish eat level 3, carnivorous zooplankton. The carnivorous zooplankton eat trophic level number 2, herbivorous zooplankton. And herbivorous zooplankton eat level number 1, phytoplankton, which is a type of autotroph. So the parts of the chain are top predators, like herring, carnivorous zooplankton, herbivorous zooplankton, and phytoplankton. This means the right answer is C, phytoplankton. We already know how whales and sharks look. Now codfish, or cod, looks like this. Question 4. How does the professor introduce the topic of seafood? The professor starts the lecture by making a joke about being on a seafood diet. He sees food and eats it. He says, "How many of you like seafood?" Most of you. So do I. In fact, I'm on a seafood diet. I see food, I eat it. The professor follows up with, "Get it? Haha, okay." But seriously, folks, we can see that he tells a joke, so B is correct. Finally, the last question is, why does the professor say this? And then there are gigantic animals like whale sharks and baleen whales that are herbivores and only eat plankton. This question might be more challenging because you need to understand why the professor is stating this. The professor is saying this to show that marine food webs are more complex than simple food chains. He mentions large animals like whale sharks and baleen whales that are herbivores and feed on plankton to illustrate that not all large animals are top predators. Usually, the answer will be very close to the statement itself. In the previous information block, the professor was discussing food chains. Now, in this block, he introduces the idea of food webs. He says, food web is more complex than a food chain. And then there are gigantic animals like whale sharks and baleen whales that are herbivores and only eat plankton. So food webs are more complex, and he illustrates this with the statement we are asked about. This means that D is correct, to highlight complexity. If you look at the transcript of the lecture, you'll see a lot of new words that we learned in the first part of this video. They are food chains, food webs, trophic relationships, marine ecosystems, autotrophic plankton, autotrophs, heterotrophic organisms, herbivores, carnivores, predators, omnivores, heterotrophic bacteria, herring, carnivorous zooplankton, herbivorous zooplankton, whale sharks, baleen whales, shellfish, crustaceans, coastal areas, and cod. You can use the Daily Dictation website to build your listening skills. Or, if you need more listening practice, feel free to check our Lingua TOEFL app. You can listen to conversations and lectures, work on full reading passages, drill reading question types, study vocabulary, and have your writing and speaking assessed by AI. That's the end of our lesson. Thanks for watching. Please let me know in the comments how many points you got right in each lecture and which words were new for you. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more tips and tricks on how to ace the TOEFL test. And remember, scoring 100+ on the TOEFL isn't rocket science. It's the little things you do that make all the difference. As always, I wish you all a stellar TOEFL score. Until next time.